What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at advanced micro devices, AMD stock, ticker symbol AMD, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Friday, March 8th. All right, guys, AMD stock here today up 75 cents a share. That's 0.36%. After hours, it is up, another, 62 cents or so. As always, volume in the after hours is very, very low, especially here today. So take it with a grain of salt, but of course it is the real price. So if you're a bull, you always prefer that it's up rather than flat or down. Just interesting here today. Today's movement actually eerily similar to yesterday's. If you're just looking very, very similar. A big volatile day for kind of a smaller green day. So let's dive in here, starting with our daily ritual, our volume profile analysis. Try to pull out some sample size bias out of today's trading on the 5-minute chart. Listen, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciate it. My goal here is 5,000 subs. It's not going to happen without you, so I appreciate you climbing aboard. And also, this is exciting. This is going to be fun, I think. I need your vote. So from here on out, every single day, I'm going to be covering a wildcard stock, but it's going to be voted on by you guys, the viewer. So before I record tomorrow's batch of videos, Friday's videos, of course, heading into for Monday's trading day, but those will be recorded on Friday, I will look through all the comments from today's batch of videos. And whichever ticker is commented the most will be the one that I cover as that day's wildcard stock. So I'll start here on the volume profile analysis. While I'm doing that, head down to the comment section and comment your ticker. So looking here, let's get started here. What I'm really after are big changes in volume that really correlate with an obvious move in stock price. Now, I'm not really interested if the move itself is not obvious, but there's a third factor that has to be there, and I think a lot of people miss this. It has to be outside of what is expected at that time of day. For example, if we're looking at the open and it matches what we may typically see on any given open on AMD, I can't really take that as out of context. Now, can I? No, because we're going to have some days where it's red, some days where it's green, and if we start taking that as the market having this big opinion, well, then we're kind of tainting the rest of the data. So here are the moves that I'm really after. Again, whichever ones draw your eye the quickest are going to be the most obvious. I want to see that one along with its recovery. And then I'm kind of looking at this downside move here later in the afternoon. And then we might as well take a look at that kind of fade after hours. Okay, let's start here from left to right. Now, on this downside move compared to its recovery, we did see some sustained selling volume on that move. However, the green candles mixed in matched the rate of the fade. What's really interesting here is typically we might see more of a rounded U shape into midday. Today we saw more like a V, okay, where we saw more sustained volume deeper into the day. So, honestly, looking at this, we may have seen a little bit of sustained selling volume there. And, I'm not going to sit here and argue with a bear that that's not there, because I think it's definitely there. Okay, it's slightly out of context, but note the usage of the word slightly. I wouldn't say it's incredible by any means. This bullish volume here, again, it's kind of similar. Like there's something there compared to the selling volume around it. Each one of these is, again, a 5-minute bar. But it's not wildly out of context there. So out of these two, I'm going to call those two kind of neutral. They kind of even each other out, in my opinion. Now, we did see a little bit of increased selling volume on this quick little downside move, early into that last, I guess you'd call it power hour. Historically, power hour is the last hour of like a Friday, for example, the last trading day of the week, typically. But I would argue that today it's not wrong to call, the last hour of a Tuesday power hour, because we see volume is so much higher and interest is so much higher these days that every day has kind of turned into a power hour now, not just the last day of the week. But in terms of this little move here, I don't know. For me, it's not definitive enough. If it was there, it would really be there. But, you might have someone argue that, oh, there's something there. There's a lot of selling volume. Sure, but it kind of matches some intraday candles that we got. And then after hours here, to me, it's very typical. You see a little bit more volume in the first like 20, 30 minutes of after hours, and then it fades heavy. So there's nothing there as well. So I think it's just as important to look at the volume analysis when there's not a lot of really obvious bias to pick out. And the reason is because, for example, if you had a 4% downside day, okay, you're going to have a lot of people claiming victory who are short or sold stock the day prior, something like that for an ego boost. And the truth of that is, if you were to look at the volume analysis heading into it, you might expect some really heavy bearish bias. But if the volume profile looks very similar to any flat or green day, then the movement itself was not necessarily done, at least to the downside, on this massive sample size, which in my opinion makes the move slightly less definitive from a big sample size perspective. The same thing really goes for bullish moves as well, right? Which is why a lot of times when you see a stock move upside on tremendous volume and is just an overpowering strong day, you oftentimes see those moves hold because you had such a big sample size. Everybody getting involved and everybody together on average decided this thing belongs higher for whatever reason, typically a catalyst. Now, let's take a look here at the 30-minute chart and take a look at levels that I'm paying attention to come tomorrow. This 30-minute here is very obvious. We have that self-fulfilling prophecy psychological 50-period moving average here. It's pretty clear. Today, we were kind of struggling to hold it. We ended up closing just above that level, and after hours, we kind of gave it up and then reclaimed it. Again, take after hours with a grain of salt. Bulls tomorrow, I would not be surprised if we see a retest of that. And upon doing so, I'm going to want to see as much volume as possible on a pull away up to the upside. Bears, you know, you are at maybe perhaps a slight disadvantage just here on the 30-minute, just because you have to get back down through the level before you can accelerate downside. So again, a breakdown through, and since you do have to break back through, ideally you'd see a break, okay, and then a retest of the level, and then as much volume as possible on the retest, a high volume pull away. If the retest itself, like that little pull-in, is on low volume, that's fine in my head. I just want that pull away. In the bearish case, it would be a rejection, a move downside after the test to be on as much volume as possible. Above average at minimum. Now, looking at the 4-hour chart here, let's take a look. You can see that we're still struggling the 50 period to get upside. Again, not unexpected at all. It takes its time on the 4-hour when you have quite the bullish move on AMD in such a short amount of time like we have had recently. Really all I'm looking for here, it's not incredibly in play, I would say. But bulls, just a continuation upside of that 50 period moving average. Getting up above 195 would be beautiful. Heading up toward 200 as soon as possible, though that is perhaps unlikely to occur tomorrow. Bears, ideally a flattening out. Again, ahead of 195. That's something that we all actually discussed, last night. And of course, this thing did get above 190 here today. So that's about a 2.5 point move, a little bit more. So bulls, not unreasonable to look for a pull up above 195 with every single round number you claim with that 50 period. And this oftentimes goes overlooked. In my head, I'm looking at that as like, okay, that's another tier higher that we've now claimed with just an additional psychological potential barrier to the downside, right? So if I'm a bull, I like that. You have protection, so to speak. Another factor of protection, climbing the ladder, getting up closer to the price. And to really beef up the move, the protection underneath the move, ideally you'd have as many psychological barriers as possible. Now, of course, you can have all of them and still break, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Now, on to the most important chart of all, that is going to be the daily, and you can see here that we are just off of all-time highs. We, of course, hit the all-time high on Wednesday. Today, kind of getting up there, testing near that area, struggling to really get up in the 214s, though. You can see here, if we take a look at this candle, the high of that daily candle there is 213.83. So, not able to get up in the 214s, but regardless, bulls, the story tomorrow, for me at least, is really clear. 210 is kind of that downside level. I'm going to want to see protected, see that 210 area hold, and, really 215 is that next area to watch, because 220, I think, is the ultimate near-term goal for a lot of bulls, but 215 is a psychological barrier, happens to also be near that all-time high region. that we have to get through before we can head up toward 220. So ideally just hold 210 upon any retest. That's going to be, I think for a lot of bulls, they might be looking at 210 as a very near-term kind of non-negotiable. Again, very near-term. I'm talking traders here. Because you have to kind of consider here, what would a bear be thinking in this case? Bears, what are you thinking? A downside break and a close below 210 ideally, because that opens you up for a downside move back to 2, which is kind of like the ultimate goal, just as 220, 225-ish is kind of the near-term ultimate goal for a lot of bulls. But all that here tomorrow hinges around 210, so I'm going to be watching that level extremely closely. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of volume around that region if we do end up seeing a backtest of that region. But again, bulls, you know, using 210 as kind of a trampoline to push up toward 215, locking in that new all-time high to kind of open up the sky toward 220 is kind of the ultimate goal here tomorrow. But again, I'm interested. If we do see a test of 210, I'm interested to see how the volume comes in around that region, because again, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of traders either potentially taking long positions with a stop set below 210 if we end up holding that region, or if we crack down beneath and then retest and fade, you know, you may see some short sellers coming in, piling in, setting stops right above 210, which could lead to some interesting price movement here tomorrow if we see a retest of 210 at all. Now, time for my favorite part of the video here. I want to see what was the option bias here today. Traders positioning themselves today heading into tomorrow, Friday. We had 700,000 total contracts traded. 435K of those were calls and 265,000 of those were puts. Broken down by time frame, actually a little bit indecisive today in the short term. You can see here that every other delta range was leaning to the call side, except for that 0 to 20 short-term speculator range. That one was actually leaning slightly to the put side, 116,000 puts and 103,000 calls. Listen, before you head out, don't forget, go ahead and leave your ticker for your vote for tomorrow's wildcard stock. Just leave the ticker in a comment and I'll count them up here tomorrow. And hey, if you got value out of the video, don't forget to subscribe on your way out. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.